or Mr Ian Blackford?
Well, there we are. I don't know if that's perhaps been picked up by the microphone, but it's just been chuntered from a sedentary position. Go back to the Isle of Skye. Mr Speaker, there's the message to the people of Scotland from the Conservative benches, and the people of Scotland will reflect on the kind of ignorance and arrogance which is shown by so-called honourable members. Mr Speaker, I thank you for granting this debate on this specific and important matter, namely that the House should consider the outcomes of the Prime Minister's recent discussions with the European Commission and European heads of government regarding the withdrawal agreement and potential ways forward. This is an important debate, and no, I or anybody else won't be going back to the Isle of Skye, because we'll be standing up in this place, standing up for our constituents. Mr Speaker, I recognise that the Prime Minister made a statement to the House yesterday. However, this matter requires further discussion and examination. It is disappointing, in the least, that the Prime Minister is not here to listen and to respond to this debate. This is a debate which has been won by the leader of the third party in the House of Commons. Where's the respect from the Prime Minister? Why is the Prime Minister not in her place to defend the inaction of her government? It is an outrage, Mr Speaker, that the Prime Minister hasn't got the gall to come to this House and debate these important matters. It's an insult to the people of Scotland, and it's an insult to the people of this House. I will happily give way on this.
Because won't the public find it strange that a minister has been asked to come here to talk about a council meeting he didn't even attend?
My honourable friend is quite correct, and we have to understand the seriousness of the situation. That the entire United Kingdom runs the risk of crashing out of the European Union, and it does so on the basis that the Prime Minister and the Government is trying to deny this House the opportunity to have a vote. And in the situation that we have secured this debate, this timely debate, then it's important that the Prime Minister recognises the importance of her being here and making sure that she can respond. Mr Speaker, we are in uncharted territory. A government found in contempt of Parliament, a Prime Minister facing weekly resignations, barely surviving a vote of confidence from her own party, still in office, but not in control. Perhaps more troubling, we are 3 months away from leaving the European Union. We are sleepwalking to disaster. There is no majority for the Prime Minister's deal. We know that the Cabinet were discussing a no-deal scenario today, a deal that very few would support. Yet the Prime Minister's actions in deferring a meaningful vote to the middle of January, and with the process of determining our future having to be agreed by the 21st of January, Mr Speaker, we run the risk of crashing out of the EU, perhaps almost by accident. Having a meaningful vote on the 14th of January, with only a week thereafter for this House to agree an alternative, is playing with fire. I'll give way.
To the honourable member, he's making a very powerful speech, and he's started off with great heat. But could I say to him, if he wants to protect Scotland and protect constituencies like mine that are concerned about business, he should vote for this deal. Is he not trying to drive us over the edge? Is it not the Scottish Government that want to see us driven over the edge and have no deal?
Well, you know, the honourable member should reflect on the fact that the Scottish National Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens voted in the Scottish Parliament to make sure Scotland's voice is heard. There is a very clear determination of the people of Scotland that we want to remain in the European Union. And what we have is deaf ears from the honourable member of Gordon that fails and refuses to stand up for the people of Scotland. That's the reality. I'm going to make some progress. Our constituents will not thank us for putting the UK in such a situation that we have 1 week from voting down the Prime Minister's deal to save the UK from a no-deal scenario. That's why we need to have this debate today. But more importantly, we need to have a vote on the meaningful vote this week. Not in the middle of January, but it should be taking place this week. The Prime Minister is playing a dangerous game of trying to lock us out of any alternative and make it a binary choice of her deal or no deal. Mr. Speaker, it is the height of irresponsibility, treating this place and the electorate with contempt. We have to be honest with ourselves, but more importantly, honest with the public. There is no such thing as a good Brexit. The government's own analysis shows that we will be better off staying in the European Union against any of the Brexit options. Put simply, we are risking growth and job opportunities. We are risking prosperity. And why? We are told by the Prime Minister it is because we must respect the referendum result. Well, Mr. Speaker, when the facts change, our opinions can also change. We have to be straight with those that voted leave or remain, that we now know that there is a price to be paid for Brexit. Job losses, putting people on the dole is not a price worth paying. No government worthy of that name is fit for purpose if it countenances such a scenario. It is an abrogation of responsibility. We know that billions are being spent on a no-deal planning. Just think on this. Money that could be spent on no-deal planning, that could be spent on the NHS, on our education, on transport and so on. But it's having to be spent on no-deal planning. What a waste that a government thinks that is appropriate. Spending money that should be spent on the front line, being spent because of the dogma of right-wing Brexiteers.
Isn't it a very real possibility that Theresa May is actually, the Prime Minister is pulling the wool over the eyes of her backbenchers as they know she's running down the clock? They think she might be going to no deal, but there is a catalogue of her party and her government describing no deal as a catastrophe. What is going to happen is she'll look at no deal, down the battle of no deal, and she'll end up revoking Article 50, and there will be hell on the Tory benches when she does.
Well, I'd simply say to the honourable member that what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have that meaningful vote this week, to make sure that this House votes down the Prime Minister's plan, votes down no deal, and then we can move on to what are the alternatives, what are the solutions. And it's the fact that the Prime Minister is risking that catastrophe that is unacceptable. I want to make a bit of progress and I'll take interventions later on. Mr. Speaker, many of us have been given briefings on Privy Council terms on the immediate impact of a no deal. I am not allowed to share the details with this House, although I will say that the information that was shared with me should now be made public. It is sobering. Mr. Speaker, the first job of any government is to protect the interest of its people. This government is wilfully exposing its citizens to risk, whether it is on job security, procurement of medicines or food supply, or indeed on aircraft being able to take off. And it saddens me that I point the finger of blame fairly and squarely at this government and at the Prime Minister. I say to this House that we have to wake up to the impact of Brexit and the options that are in front of us. There are MPs working on a cross-party basis that want to break the logjam. The SNP have been working with the Lib Democrats, Plaid Cymru and the Greens, and I want to commend them for the desire to work on a cross-party basis. There are also members of Parliament in the Labour Party and indeed in the Conservative Party who have spoken out, in particular have supported a people's vote. I know that there are many others in the Labour Party and the Conservatives who want a people's vote. I understand the issue of party loyalty, but the issue today is one of loyalty to the electorate and the individual nations that make up the United Kingdom. Now is the time to stand up and be counted. This is a constitutional crisis where each and every one of us have an individual responsibility. Parliament will not be forgiven by many of our young people if we allow the greatest example of economic self-harm in modern times to take place. Mr. Speaker, let me address the Leader of the Opposition, and I do this from a position of sorrow. I believe that the Leader of the Opposition is a man of great principle, but I have to say to him that the Leader of the Opposition has become the midwife for Brexit. The Leader of the Opposition is letting the government off the hook. He has it within his gift to bring forward a no-confidence motion that will test the will of the House, but crucially will allow his party to move on to the issue of a people's vote. Yesterday's stunt was an embarrassment. The Scottish National Party and others sought to amend his motion, and I'm asking the Leader of the Opposition today to do what he failed spectacularly to do yesterday and bring forward a motion of no confidence in the government, and let us move on and have that debate tomorrow.
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way. I think the Labour Party have made it clear that we will place a no-confidence vote in the government where we think we have got the best opportunity of winning that vote. However, does he also agree with me that it's a crying shame that the Prime Minister chose to operate these negotiations always in the best interest of the Conservative Party, whereas perhaps if she had considered the national interest, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now?
I do agree with my honourable friend on that last point. She knows I have respect for her, but I would say to her that on the basis of the risks that we all face, that we have a responsibility to come together. And I've spoken about the support that we have had in working together with the Liberal Democrats, with the Greens and Plaid Cymru. And I'm pleading with the Labour Party to work with us as well. We have to unite, because it's in the interest of all our nations to do that. And we need to bring forward that motion of no confidence because of the conditions that the Labour Party have laid down, that we need to see if we can trigger a general election first. So we need to test the will of the House on that issue. And on the basis of that, we're then in a position that we can move forward. And I'm simply saying to the Leader of the Opposition, based on the risks, the very, very real risks of a no deal, that are there as a consequence of the stupidity of what has come from the government, that we now have that responsibility. And today is the day. Not tomorrow, not when we come back in January. Today is the day where the opposition must put down on a united basis a motion of no confidence. I'll give way one more time.
In that spirit of solidarity, will he join the member for Glenrothes and Central Fife in supporting my bill on the order paper today, the European Revocation, Notification and Withdrawal Bill, which basically rules out any possibility of a no-deal Brexit and requires any deal to be agreed by this House and a vote of the people, or else we stay in the EU by revoking Article 50?
I mean, the honourable gentleman is to be commended for his actions, and of course we made it very clear that we were supporting the Hilary Benn amendment that would have ruled out no deal. But we're engaged in a process that all of us want to go through, and I think it is important that the legal action that was taken by a number of Scottish parliamentarians on a cross-party basis has got us to that position that we know we can revoke Article 50. And indeed, that may be what has to happen. But I think what we've got to do is get to the situation that the House is given an opportunity to vote for a people's vote first. And it may well be in that scenario that revocation of Article 50 has to take place. I do want to make progress, and I will allow interventions later on. I'll give way to him.
To whom is the right honourable gentleman giving way?
I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way. Could I actually thank him for actually knowing what parliamentary procedure is and putting this motion down and getting it right? I certainly have been calling for that party to grow up and actually table what they keep talking about or threatening us with, and he is to be congratulated. Could I just take him back, though, to the point that he was making about the people's vote? And I ask this as a sincere question. He was unhappy with the outcome of the Scottish independence referendum. He is unhappy with the outcome of the 2016 referendum. Why would he accept the outcome of a people's vote any more than he hasn't accepted the other two?
I am grateful for the intervention because it allows me to make the point that in 2014, when we had our referendum, in Scotland we produced an 800-odd page white paper. The people of Scotland knew exactly what the vision was that we had for an independent Scotland. But crucially, if you look at what happened in 2016, we had a slogan on the side of a bus. We had a ridiculous situation that people weren't told the truth as to what the impact of Brexit would be. And crucially, I'll have to say to the honourable gentleman that way back in 2014, the people of Scotland were told that if we stayed within the United Kingdom, that Scotland would remain a member of the European Union. Our rights as European citizens would be respected.
Said it as well. They said it too.
We faced the situation that in the referendum in 2016, the people of Scotland voted to remain by 62%. And we were told if we stayed in the United Kingdom that we would lead the UK. We would be respected as a partner in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, what do we find? We don't find that we're leading the UK. We find that the UK is taking us out of the European Union against our will. And I say to honourable members here that the Scottish National Party will not sit back and will allow the people of Scotland to be dragged out of the European Union against its will. Scotland is a European nation. We will remain a European nation.
He is making an excellent speech and painting a very bleak picture of the mess the UK is getting itself into. And under normal circumstances, the Prime Minister would be long gone by now. But given no one else wants the job, not even the flip-flopping Brexit-enabling leader of the opposition, does he agree with me that Scotland's future lies squarely as an independent country, being an equal partner within the European Union?
I thank my honourable friend for that point, and of course what the First Minister of Scotland has said is that we will work constructively across party to try and save the UK from Brexit. We make it absolutely clear we wish to stay in. But when we get to the end of that process, if there is an economic threat to jobs and prosperity in Scotland, amongst other things, then it's very clear that the Scottish Parliament has a mandate to call an independence referendum. There is a majority in the Scottish Parliament to hold such a referendum. Just a few months ago, this House voted to accept the claim of right for Scotland. If the Scottish Parliament comes forward with a request for a Section 30 authority, then this House must allow the people of Scotland to determine their own future. I want to make progress, and I'll take interventions later on. Mr. Speaker, here we have a Parliament in London silenced by this government, and the devolved administrations silenced and ignored. The magnitude and the seriousness of the scale of the challenge that sits before us cannot be underestimated. This week, this House will go into recess. We cannot allow this farce to continue over the Christmas period. The Prime Minister has returned from Brussels with nothing. Humiliated, told by the European Union there is no new negotiation. Yet the Prime Minister continues to bury her head in the sand, hoping that the squeeze of time, the threat and the pressure of a no deal will get her blindfold Brexit over the line. Madam Deputy Speaker, it won't. This government should bring the meaningful vote now, put the options on the table now, or stand aside and let the people decide.
Anna's going to have a seizure for giving way. Can he help us with this? I very much agree with what he is proposing in terms of this vote coming back immediately, and then, of course, the various options that are open to us being voted on in a meaningful way in this place. In that event, would he and his party vote for what's called Norway Plus, something I know he's argued for, as indeed I have, which is for the single market and the customs union? Or does he take the view that that boat has set sail?
I'm grateful for that intervention. It's a very useful intervention to make. And the position of the Scottish National Party has always been that the people of Scotland voted to remain, and we wish that to be respected. And the people's vote creates the circumstances that at least we can test the will of the people in the United Kingdom. Now, we have said that we are seeking to compromise. We've sought to compromise over the course of the last 2.5 years. And the honourable lady is absolutely correct that we said that was the minimum that we would accept. But I believe that that ship has now sailed. We ought to be staying in the European Union. That is the best option. We should be putting that to the people, and I'm grateful that the honourable lady also takes that view. Now, I need to make progress. I'm aware that many other members wish to speak, and I wish to move on. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told us we would get our meaningful vote, but we would get it in the second week of January. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is not acceptable. Does this government recognise that with every week that passes, more and more uncertainty sets in? We hear day after day of companies putting off investment decisions, and it's the uncertainty and the chaos of this government that's leading to that. Businesses, farmers, workers, all left waiting on this government. Delaying the vote is a total abrogation of responsibility, causing even greater uncertainty and instability. Yet again, the fate of our services and our economy is left to playing second fiddle to the internal struggles of the Tory party. The truth is, the Prime Minister is hamstrung by her own party. The result of the recent confidence vote was little more than a Pyrrhic victory for the Prime Minister. At a crucial time in the UK's history, it has a lame duck Prime Minister saddled with a lame duck Brexit deal. The Prime Minister cannot and must not use this support to claim that her choice is now between her bad Brexit and a catastrophic no-deal Brexit. The Prime Minister will have to face up to the fact that her deal carries no majority in the House of Commons. She must break the deadlock, and the SNP will support any second EU referendum which has remained as an option. Still struggling to cobble together support for her disastrous deal, the Prime Minister is seeking to run down the clock rather than act in all our national interests. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, we as parliamentarians cannot let that happen. We must ensure that the voices of our citizens are heard. The Prime Minister's deal must be defeated. No one with the interests of this and the future generations at heart could possibly accept it. This deal will take Scotland out of the EU against our will and remove us from the European single market of 500 million people. It will take us out of the customs union and the benefits of EU trade deals with more than 40 countries across the globe. Madam Deputy Speaker, it will make us poorer than staying in the European Union. I can see a minister shaking his head, but he should really look at his own economic analysis. Every shred of evidence shows that we're going to be poorer with Brexit than we would be if we stayed in. And if he hasn't even read it, and if he doesn't understand what's in it, then heaven, frankly, help us. If we talk about a no-deal Brexit, it is going to cost, on average, each person in Scotland £1,600 by 2030, compared to continued EU membership. It will damage... No, it's not. I'll give.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. He's on the subject of economic analysis. I draw his attention to page 63 of the economic analysis supplied by the government, where it clearly shows that under the Prime Minister's deal, there is a zero impact on economic growth for Scotland. So surely, if you want to stand up for Scotland, by backing this deal.
I'm afraid to say the honourable gentleman is mistaken, because the analysis that he's referring to looks at Chequers. It doesn't look at the government's deal. I'm afraid to say the honourable gentleman is wholly wrong. He really needs to go back to school and do his homework. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government's Brexit deal will damage our NHS in Scotland and make it harder to attract and retain the social care and health service staff we need. It will sell out our fishermen and put us at a competitive disadvantage with Northern Ireland. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister knows it. That is why our voice must be heard. This House should vote this week.
Oh, that was very good. Mr. Blackford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. That is why our voice must be heard. This House should vote this week before the recess.
I thank them for giving way. You're aware that last night during the Fishes Bill Committee there was an amendment put forward that would set a closure date of 31st of December 2020 for leaving the CFP, and the Tories voted it down. That's a real commitment to the fishermen.
I I'm not surprised, because the Conservatives have formed. It was Ted Heath, when he took us into the European Union, that sold out Scotland's fishermen. And every Tory administration since then has done exactly the same. And guess what? They're still selling out Scotland's fishermen.
Is she mad?
Madam Deputy Speaker, running down the clock to threaten a no-deal Brexit is neither acceptable nor realistic. There is no majority in this House for such an outcome. It is critical that a no-deal Brexit and the Prime Minister's deal are ruled out now. The Government must start listening to the Scottish Parliament, stop wasting time on its deal, which is going to be rejected, and pursue a better way forward. In a little while. The SNP are clear. That means that there should be an extension to the Article 50 process, and we will join with those from other parties in trying to secure such an extension. We have always argued that the best option is to retain EU membership, and we support a second EU referendum, and failing that, the best option of continued EU membership, we must stay in the single market and the customs union. I repeat, Madam Deputy Speaker, that there are options that this Government is ducking and diving. Madam Deputy Speaker.
Order. I would like to hear the right honourable gentleman, even if nobody else does. I want to hear what he's saying, and he will be treated with the courtesy due to the leader of a party in this place. Now, order, Mr. Blackford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm most grateful for that. I have obviously taken a number of interventions, and I may take one or two more, but I'm conscious that many people wish to speak in this debate. There's a number of remarks that I want to make. I will give way in a little while. Madam Deputy Speaker, the recent European Court of Justice judgment provides clarity to an essential point in the UK's decision-making over its future relationship with the EU. It exposes as false the idea that the only choice is between a bad deal negotiated by the Government or a disaster of no deal. Remaining in the EU is still on the table. The Prime Minister cannot insinuate otherwise. We as opposition parties cannot allow the Government to kick the can down the road. We cannot allow the Government to run down the clock. I repeat, this is not a binary choice of this deal or no deal. There are other ways forward. The Prime Minister is simply scaremongering, trying to prevent a second EU referendum. This Government claims to want to fulfil the will of the people, yet it denies the people of the United Kingdom a say. This is a democracy. It is not a dictatorship. After 2 years of chaos, people have the right to change their mind. Why would the Government deny them a say? We cannot go on like this. We need clarity, certainty and conclusion. This continued turbulence is sending our economy into further insecurity. At a time when this place should be doing more to end homelessness, to decrease worklessness, to stop universal credit hardship, to safeguard our NHS. I could go on, but this Prime Minister, this Government is distracted and divided. It is time that they got on with the day job.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way, and I picked up a point he made earlier in response to the opposition MPs over there. What Scotland, the government MPs, Scotland faces the same as the rest of the country, and that is, under this deal there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknowings. The EU can tell us what to do, virtually. There's no plan B that's so far the government's come forward with. We don't even know at the end of this deal what's going to happen. Expenditure has not been guaranteed. It's only been guaranteed up to 2020. That affects universities, research and development, and the major manufacturers in this country. Would they not agree with that? It's a disgrace.
Well, I would agree with the honourable gentleman that what the Government's put forward is a plan for transition. There is no certainty for the long term. But that is why, as members around this House, including members on the Government benches, we have to call a halt to this. And we should be doing this week. And we should be doing it on the basis that there is a real threat to the jobs, to the incomes, to the security of all our people, of a Prime Minister that is recklessly taking us towards a potential no deal. And we as a House should be putting a stop to it. And that's the opportunity that we should be taking this week. I'm going to make progress. I'm not going to take any more interventions. I've been generous with my time. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told us that she was planning for a no-deal Brexit. Prime Minister, there can be no deal. It must be removed from the table. Madam Deputy Speaker, it would be economically catastrophic. This government must remove no deal from the table instead of using it as a gun to MPs' heads. You know, we were promised strong and stable. The people were promised that we would take back control. This, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a party and a government completely out of control. I look around this chamber at colleagues, friends, and maybe some who would call themselves foe, but in common, we came here to serve. I came here to serve Scotland, my people, my country, and it devastates me to see the will of my people disregarded by this UK government. It angers to see my Parliament in Scotland, our Parliament in Scotland, our First Minister and her Cabinet locked out by this Tory government from decisions that will affect the rights and the lives of people right across our country. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is not right. Members from other parts will feel the same. I know that England and Wales voted to leave, but what about the rest of us that voted to stay? So much for the union of equals that we were promised. The SNP will work with others to protect all of the UK from Brexit. It is the right thing to do. We will work constructively in this House. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, our first priority as the Scottish National Party is to stand up for Scotland. And it is becoming ever clearer that Scotland has been hampered by its continuance in the United Kingdom. We do not coexist in a partnership of equals. With every day that passes, this government is making the case for Scottish independence. The UK government's behaviour over the Continuity Bill, exposed this week by the UK Supreme Court, shows the utter contempt with which they are treating Scotland. With the UK government's approach to Brexit in complete and utter chaos, it is no wonder the Scottish Parliament don't trust Westminster to prepare our laws for life after Brexit. And of course, we had the outrageous power grab on the powers of the Scottish Parliament, and not one Scottish Tory MP stood up to defend the rights of our Parliament that the people of Scotland voted for in 1997. They voted against Scotland's interests. History once again repeating itself. Madam Deputy Speaker, what we have from this government is empty, meaningless words. That's all we can accept from this government. And now these words are not worth the paper they are transcribed on, as promise after promise is broken by a UK government. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's time that we had our say. It's time we got our answers. Let me put it to the Leader of the Opposition again, and I'm sorry he's not here. Table a vote of no confidence in this government. We are with you. However, it is clear today that the gimmick motion has failed. But I say to the Leader of the Opposition, table the correct motion. Do it today. The SNP stands ready to end this farce, to end this shambles. We're ready to defeat this Tory government and the damage in Brexit. A Tory government that wants to put Scottish workers on the dole through Brexit. The question for the Leader of the Opposition is he prepared to stand...
Order! But that's enough. The honourable gentleman is concluding his speech. He will do so and be listened to. Mr Blackford.
Get some manners.
A failure to lay a motion of no confidence will be a dereliction of duty. We now need to call time on this government. The Prime Minister's time is up. The government must go. We cannot allow the Conservatives to drive us off the cliff edge. So the Leader of the Opposition cannot also seek to run down the clock to buy himself more time. He claims he wants an election. Well, if you want this government out, then listen to the other opposition parties. We will support you in a vote of no confidence. Now is the time for courage. Now is the time for all of us to stand up for our communities. Now is the time for the Prime Ministers to stand down, for this government to stand aside and let the people decide.
Yeah.